So many of you may have already seen this, but we've actually extended out our flood watch until 7 p.m. on Sunday. Likely won't need to be extended any further than that. I know we've had to extend it here a bunch this week, but it looks like this will sort of be the end of our event here after tomorrow. The heavy rainfall flooding threat will increase across the watch area tonight, and that threat will continue through the day on Sunday, and we'll get some more specifics about that here in a minute. In general, the same areas of concern for really what we've been seeing all week, unfortunately. It's basically the northern half of southeast Texas. We did put Austin and Colorado counties back in. It's kind of a close call there in the southwest, but we felt a little more comfortable doing that with some high rain rates possible here late tonight into tomorrow in that area as well. But generally, the watch area is, near and north of I-10, and again, it will be going until 7 o'clock tomorrow. So we've been showing this. This is kind of our best high-resolution model guidance ensemble together, and then some maximums put back in to give you sort of a realistic look what might happen. It won't be perfect, we know that, but we are expecting an organized area of thunderstorms, and it's going to move in from the west-northwest tonight. Very confident about that. It's in all of our model guidance. There'll also be some additional bands and clusters of storms in vicinity ahead and behind this line. So it won't be done when the line moves through. We'll have some additional showers and thunderstorms behind it. We're thinking in the watch area, and you can kind of see this from the picture, we're looking at average rainfall rates of 1 to 3 inches. And I'm using the term smaller areas instead of isolated because this air mass has been able to perform, unfortunately, really well with rainfall. So I think as you see in the pictures where you see sort of the reds and orange areas, it's kind of smaller areas within the big footprint that might see 4 to 8 inches. It's probably actually likely that some areas are going to see that much. And again, that's for the watch area. This pattern could shift a little south or north, but there will be a gradient. And so probably like across Harris County, Liberty County, and then maybe back towards Colorado, Austin, there might be a little bit tighter gradient in rainfall than this is showing. But with uncertainty, we don't know exactly where that, higher to lower amounts will set up exactly. So, but unfortunately, when you look up there around Crockett, Huntsville, Livingston, even Conroe, those are the areas that are probably likely to see the higher rainfall amounts. It's just hard to place them exactly where. Going along with this idea, the excessive rainfall outlook, which is for today or the rest of today and into tonight, we've got a slight risk of additional flash flooding, and then a marginal south of that, generally within the watch area. And you can think of a slight risk as sort of a scattered risk of flash flooding, and then tomorrow, a moderate risk. And the moderate is quite a bit more coverage of flash flooding potential, and also severity. So, it's pretty obvious to see why we have the moderate with the heavy rainfall threat in that area. That area has been seeing a lot of rain. Everything that falls is basically going to be runoff. So that's why the moderate risk is there for tomorrow. The severe weather risk, tonight when that band comes in, it'll probably be a line of pretty vigorous storms, and it should hit College Station in the early morning hours, maybe as early as 2 or 3 a.m. That area out west has a decent chance of some high winds, and that's why they're in the slight risk. That band may weaken a little bit as far as the severe potential as it moves east, at least on the northern side. But what's interesting is that there's also some development further south that might happen kind of Sunday morning that's intense, and that's why you see the slight risk there for Columbus and that area. So it's not, like I said, it's not just one line. It could be some segments of lines that can produce some wind damage, and the atmosphere is unstable enough to also produce some 1 to 2 inch hail in spots. And that risk is better out west than it is east. And isolated tornadoes, a possibility, not as high of a risk as the wind and hail. So I added this. I thought this might be helpful. Again, it won't play out exactly like this, but you can sort of see how the precipitation and banding and lines might play out. So 6 p.m. today on the far left, some more isolated development. We've actually been seeing that in our northern areas, northeast areas this afternoon with heating. That'll continue. Kind of our northwest areas to see some possibly even strong storms this evening. And then there could be kind of some more organized convection that develops across our northern areas. But if you look out west, that's the line that's forming around midnight that should start to accelerate towards southeast Texas. And by 6 a.m., likely approaching the Houston area down to Wharton and that area. So when it initially comes in, some wind damage possible. And then also, even in the early morning hours, 6, 7, 8 a.m. could still have some areas of strong winds with it as well, and little pockets where we have bowing segments. But also, you noticed this may be, why we're probably getting more rainfall across the north is behind that line, even at noon, looks to be some scattered areas of pretty heavy rain, even behind the line continuing, and then finally pushing east of the area, likely Sunday evening, and that's kind of why we're ending the watch. So this is every 6 hours, kind of showing you how the model would simulate the reflectivity. Okay, with that, I'm going to pass it over like we've been doing to Katie Landry-Guyton, who will give us the river forecast and any changes there. And I'm going to make her the presenter here. Okay, Katie, you should have control of that.
Yes, I do. Can you see my screen?
I've seen it, yes.
All right, great. So just to give everybody a situation overview of where we currently are with river flooding. So you can see we have seen some improvements, especially on the San Jacinto and on the upper portion of the Trinity. Still experiencing minor to major river flooding on the Trinity. Good news is that Lake Livingston has started to decrease their releases. They're currently at 118,700 CFS. So that's down from 124,000 CFS where they were yesterday. And we're already seeing some improvements just downstream as well around the Romayor area. And we'll walk through some of those forecasts in just a minute. Over in the San Jacinto, still experiencing minor to major river flooding. Lake Conroe has decreased their releases down to 20,945,000 CFS. So that's good news from where they were 2 days ago. Looking on the Brazos as well, the Navasota River at Normandy has crested. It's still in major flood, and it's currently routing downstream, and we'll talk about that forecast, as well as how that's going to impact the lower portion of the Brazos. So like we've been doing, we'll start off with the Trinity. I did want to show, so here's the Trinity River near Crockett. We're currently at around 41.82 feet. You can see there's a slight bump that's coming from water upstream, and you're going to see that kind of route down, but should not cause any additional rises downstream. You're just going to see it kind of pad the recession. I just didn't want you to hear that there is a lot of water that's still coming down and could cause additional rises. I think if we do see additional rises, that would be from any isolated heavy rainfall that could fall over the next 24 to 48 hours. I did forget to mention that these forecasts do still have 48 hours of forecasted rainfall in them. But most of that is basin average. And so anywhere you see some of these heavier bands set up that fall maybe right on top of the gauge, you could see a slight bump up. But most of that is factored into these forecasts as a basin average of, say, 1 to 2 inches, somewhere further up to the north, probably closer to 2 to 3 inches basin average. So working your way downstream, so before you get to Riverside, you can see Bedice Creek near Madisonville, still on a slow fall, hanging around minor flood stage, and should fall below minor flood stage within the next 6 to 12 hours. Trinity River at Riverside is currently 104.23 feet, so right above major flood, should fall below major flood within the next several hours, and will continue on a slow fall, mainly because we're still routing some of those upstream flows. Expecting a fall below moderate flood stage towards the end of next week. So assuming Livingston is going to be continuing to decrease their releases, a lot of that is kind of factored into here. We've got the Trinity River near Goodrich currently at 47.9 feet. So you can see we have crested there, and it crested just below record flood. And it is going to be on a slow fall. We do anticipate Lake Livingston needing to continue their releases at a much lower level than where they were at their peak. And that's just basically going to keep it in moderate flood stage. Once it falls below moderate flood stage within the next, say, 48 hours, it'll kind of just stay in moderate flood stage for the rest of the 5-day period. Menard Creek at Rye, it did crest overnight and is on a slow fall, currently in moderate flood stage at 26.3 feet. It's going to continue on a fall, falling below minor flood stage going into the Monday timeframe, and then slowly falling from there. Romayor has also crested. You can see it's got a lot of bouncing activity at the gauge itself. You can see that it is on a fall though. It should fall below minor flood stage on Monday as well and continue on a slow fall as we continue to see those flows coming out of Lake Livingston. Liberty and Moss Bluff are the ones that we still are seeing rises on the Trinity. And those should be, so Liberty should be cresting within the next 24 hours. We're expecting it to peak at about 31.6 feet. And that is going to basically be, as far as impacts wise, similar to what you're currently seeing now. So we do not anticipate any major increase in the impacts from what you're currently at. But those impacts are going to stay through the next 5 days. So just the continued river flooding of what you're currently seeing, maybe slightly more impacts over the next 24 to 48 hours. And then looking at the Trinity River at Moss Bluff, you've got currently at 16.4 feet, which is moderate flood stage. We're expecting to rise above major flood stage going into the Sunday night into Monday timeframe, and then cresting on the 7th, so that's Tuesday at 18.2 feet. So that's just under record flood. I did go ahead and include the quick look at the inundation map for the forecast. So the inundation map is performing well in some areas and not well in others. So what I wanted to point out to you is mainly the heat map, which is where we anticipate most of the structures being inundated in this area. So just downstream of the gauge, you can see in the Moss Bluff area, we've been showing kind of the zoomed in area in our previous briefings. So please reference those slides for specific locations. But then also downstream near Wallaceville, there's an area downstream of I-10 that we're concerned about with structure flooding as well. There is structure flooding, or at least structures being cut off throughout the reach, but those are the two areas that we're most concerned about. Switching over to the San Jacinto, so we'll start off on the East Fork. The East Fork at Cleveland, it crested back on the 2nd, going into the 3rd in the morning time frame. And it's been on a slow fall. It did kind of have a slight bump up from some of the routed flows that we're still getting in there. But mainly it's going to be on a fall over the next 5 days. We're expecting it to kind of hold in minor flood stage at least until tomorrow midday, and then continuing to fall. Looking at the San Jacinto River down near New Caney, it also crested and is on a slow fall, still a major flood. We do not anticipate it falling below major flood until tomorrow night into Monday morning. And we're not anticipating it falling below flood stage over the next 5 days. And again, any additional rainfall that will fall over the next 24 to 48 hours will just continue to pad this recession. I did include a map of the Harris County Flood Control District flood extent map for this area, as well as the Caney Creek right next to it, mainly just to show you what is currently flooded. These are more extensive maps than what we had been showing to kind of show the extent of where the flooding is currently at. A lot of the same areas that have been pushed over the past few days are still experiencing flooding right now, and will continue to experience flooding over the next 24 to 48 hours, and slowly improving as we go through the beginning and middle part of next week. The portion downstream is in this smaller box. This is as you're getting closer to Lake Houston. There is some of those backwater effects, so we could see some of that flooding persist until we see improvements on Lake Houston as that water continues to drain. Looking at Peach Creek near Splendora, still in a fall, expecting it to fall below minor flood stage going into tomorrow midday. And we are expecting another bump up to potentially going up into minor flood stage from some of the rainfall over the next 48 hours. So probably seeing a secondary rise on Peach Creek going into the Monday timeframe. Depending on where some of the heaviest rainfall sets up, this could, of course, bump up into minor flood sooner. We'll just kind of have to see where we get some of those higher amounts. Looking at Caney Creek near Splendora, similar. We're currently in minor flood. It's going to fall below minor flood within the next 6 to 12 hours. It'll keep falling until we get more rainfall into the basin and cause a secondary rise. Same thing on Monday. But again, depending on if it gets hit again, maybe if it gets hit right on top of the gauge, you could see it pop up above minor flood stage. But it's still too soon to tell exactly where some of those heavier bands might set up and what basins they would fall into. Then moving over to the West Fork side, starting off at Lake Creek above the Woodlands, still in minor flood stage, falling below minor flood stage until not until tomorrow. And it will continue to fall slowly, seeing a secondary rise potentially going into the Tuesday timeframe from any rainfall that falls over the next 24 to 48 hours. It'll take time for it to route down to the actual gauge. So we'll need to monitor the rainfall over the next 24 hours or so, just to kind of see where it sets up and in what basins it falls in. West Fork San Jacinto near Conroe. So we are currently at 117 feet. That is now in moderate flood stage. It's going to continue to fall. You can see that it's expected to fall below flood stage within the next 24 hours. Depending again on where some of the heaviest rainfall sets up. This includes the about 1 to 2 inches of basin average, so it just kind of pads the recession. We'll just need to keep an eye on how the rainfall trends set up. Looking at Porter downstream, we've seen the crest there, currently at 86.6 feet. And on a fall, expecting us to fall below flood stage tomorrow morning time frame, and continuing to fall from there over the next 5 days. And then at Humble, we are currently seeing it cresting. It's cresting at 58.8 feet. So this is good news. We were initially expecting it at 62 feet, and then we lowered it down to 60 feet because we saw less flows down the West Fork. And so all that water has reached the Humble gauge. So it is currently cresting. We do not anticipate another rise unless if we see heaviest rainfall set up right on top of the gauge, or get similar trends where you're getting repeated rainfall over the same area within the basin itself. But right now, this is the forecast with 48 hours of rainfall with about 1 inch basin average. So we're expecting it to be on a slow fall, staying in major flood stage at least until Monday timeframe, likely into potentially into Tuesday, and then seeing it fall below flood stage sometime on Wednesday morning. I went ahead and included the inundation map from Harris County Flood Control District here as well. You can see these are all the locations where we are currently seeing flooding. These are the same areas that we had been pinpointing in the forecasted flood inundation map and with the coordination with Harris County Flood Control District. A lot of these areas have homes cut off, a lot of street flooding, and potential isolated structure flooding. You can also see that Lake Houston Parkway is closed from the high flows, working its way down. Now, just because we've seen the crest at Humble, we still are seeing that water route into Lake Houston, and there is still backwater issues. So some of these smaller creeks that are routing into Lake Houston could see backwater and would be slow to recede. So we might see flooding and the flooding impacts persist for a couple more days. And then down at Sheldon, so we have seen the crest there, 19.7 feet. It is on a slow fall as well. Still seeing a lot of that water coming out of Lake Houston. I believe their outflow is about 171,000 CFS. And this is taking that into consideration with what's still coming down. So that's why it is on a very slow fall. We do not anticipate it falling below major flood stage until the morning hours on Tuesday, and then continuing on a slow fall, not falling below flood stage, which is 10 feet, until the end of the 5-day period. And we do not anticipate a fall below 8 feet until beyond that 5-day period, probably looking at the early part of next weekend, so Friday or Saturday timeframe of next weekend. Here's the inundation map from Harris County Flood Control District for the Sheldon area. You can see the extent of the river flooding from Sheldon and Rio Villa, and all of that routing downstream, so you can kind of get an idea of where we potentially have impacts moving down towards the coast. If you have any questions regarding this, please feel free to reach out to us or Harris County Flood Control District, and we can walk you through what some of those impacts are. Now moving over to the Brazos, starting off at the Navasota River near Normandy, we have seen the crest there. It crested at 25.6 feet, currently at 24.7 feet. We are expecting it to fall below major flood stage on Sunday night into Monday morning, and then falling on a slow fall, not seeing it fall below minor flood stage over the next 5 days though. We've been getting a lot of questions as far as what does this look like downstream all the way to Navasota. Basically, we're anticipating a 48-hour lag time between the crest here at Normandy and when it reaches down at Navasota. You could probably cut that in half for seeing the impacts at Highway 30. So the crest was about, it was last night, you could say probably around 4 a.m. So we're expecting the peak of the flows to reach down to the Highway 30 gauge within probably the next 12 hours. And then expecting to see the peak of all this flow down at State Highway 6 by about 4 a.m. on Monday morning. And again, the biggest concern is a lot of the debris that's going to be coming down with it. And then we're starting to look at the Brazos River downstream and how all that's going to be impacting the lower portion of the Brazos. So starting off at Hempstead, you can see all that routed water is going to be making its way. Currently seeing it at the end of the 5-day period at 45.8 feet. At Richmond, we're currently seeing it reach 42.8 feet. Sugarland, 67 feet by the 5-day period, and that's in minor flood stage. Rocheron getting up to 43.5 feet in flood stage. And then at the end of the 5-day period for West Columbia, 24.3 feet at the end of the 5-day period. So we're going to start to see that flood wave continuing to make its way downstream, and we'll be shifting gears to paying attention to the Brazos within the next 24 hours. If you have specific questions about that, please reach out to me. And with that, I will take any questions that you might have about the ongoing river flooding or any potential concerns for the continued threat of river flooding over the next 5 or so days.